Welcome to the first edition of Showcase. This is a very straightforward video compilation that showcases our standout work from the past few weeks. And when you watch this video, I hope that it helps inspire you, helps you raise your game, gives you ideas, or just makes you feel very proud of the work that we do across ITV Regional News. You see your output day in, day out. What this video does is gives you a selection of clips from across all our regions.
This was typical of the sort of problems facing people right across our region today.
Our storm coverage across several regions was exceptional, really first-class reporting in the front line.
The winds reached their peak here in the early hours of this morning, with gusts reaching up to 68 miles an hour. Witnesses describe seeing a group of 10 teenagers playing down on the beach and dodging the waves. It was then a huge wave caught the young boy and swept him out to sea.
We were only talking yesterday dinner time about, what happened. The storm was coming in. Next thing you know, it's gone.
At first light, teams of contractors were out cutting up trees that were blocking roads.
What I really liked was the use of locator straps on screen. This really gave our viewers the scale of coverage and was a great guide to them. And ITV London used viewers' pictures to good effect.
And you've been getting in touch with your photos, which capture much of the damage and the disruption caused by the storm. One Twitter user has taken this picture of at least a dozen cars trapped under boardings that flew over outside the Francis Crick Institute.
The high winds hit coastal regions through Sunday morning. As the storm moved eastwards, wind speeds increased as midnight approached.
So the storm graphic that you've just seen there was produced by the Graphics Hub team in Birmingham, and their work over the last few months has been outstanding. And where it really works is where it's thoroughly planned and thought through by the graphics designers in the Hub and the region, and the end result is a high quality bespoke graphic. One graphic that caught my eye was produced for ITV Central on a story about gritters.
In Nottinghamshire, they got through 22,000 tonnes of grit last year and have 22,000 tonnes in stock. In Derbyshire, they used 40,000 tonnes last winter and have 24,000 tonnes in stock. And Lincolnshire got through more than 40,000 tonnes of salt last year and have 35,000 tonnes stockpiled.
The key thing about this graphic was getting the idea into the Hub nice and early. I was confident that the various councils would be able to provide the information I needed. So I spoke to John about the idea. He told me what shots he needed, and the councils actually provided the figures later in the week, and they were the last things to go into the graphic.
I received the clips from Callum 2 or 3 days before the piece was on air, so I had time to work on it while working on other projects. And the early press was very important, as a tracking take a while to perfect, plus I had to do 2 versions for the East and the West.
And there have been many other examples in the past few weeks.
Over the past 3 years, there have been 170 attacks on ambulance crews in the northeast. That has resulted in staff being off work for a total of 793 days. And the cost of backfilling them is a staggering £88,243.
The highest cranes of their kind in the world. They are the first stage of a process that sees containers picked up from ships and finally put onto lorries. The cargo on board come from destinations as far away as China and South Africa. Alternatively, the containers can be stored at a massive distribution centre next to the port and kept there until companies send them on to stores and shops right across the southeast.
The unions argue the East Coast Main Line has made the government almost £1 billion in profit since it was taken back from National Express, that it's invested another £40 million into the service, and that 86% of passengers are satisfied with their journeys. That's slightly higher than average.
Researchers calculated that a 20% tax on sugary drinks, adding roughly 12p to a can of fizzy pop, would reduce purchases by around 15%. And reduce the average calorie consumption by 28 calories a week.
But it's not just bespoke graphics from the Hub. Our use of templated Chiron graphics is also improving. The Graphics Champions Day in Birmingham was clearly a great help to everybody, and one region in particular, Meridian, has got a very organised approach to it, and their use of Chiron is very effective.
What made a father kill his 2 young sons before killing himself? Tonight, the boy's grandfather claims it was an act of vengeance against his daughter.
Graham Anderson was facing eviction from his flat in Tidworth when he killed Bryn, who was 3, and 11-year-old Jack.
Well, latest figures show that 5,500 people are killed or badly injured in accidents involving young drivers every year. 40% of 17-year-olds have an accident in the first 6 months of driving, and 18-year-olds are 3 times more likely to crash than a more experienced driver. It is the biggest construction project in the UK and is set to transform the economy of the South East.
It's all about the planning in the morning meetings. What maps and plasmas do we want? What sort of treatment do we want to give to the reports? And it's an early call to the Hubs team to see if they can help us out in the day, and it's very much leading from the top.
In a statement, the school has said they were both independent, strong-minded individuals who lived their lives to the full, with confidence and a sense of humour and a sense of fun. The tributes to the teenagers continue to arrive. The good thing is there are so many templates, you can get pretty creative with it. And when Nev brings out his weekly update, I always think, oh, I'll just give that a little try. Like the piece to camera quote recently. When you have one of those stories like a court case where you don't have many pictures, you're struggling to get an interviewee, using a graphic like that can just give it that little lift.
In the past few weeks, we've seen great examples of original journalism, big story coverage and creative features with terrific camera work and editing right at the heart of it. I want to start with ITV News calendar, and in particular reporter John Hill and his coverage of the Hamza Khan case. His live reporting and backgrounder was very sensitively handled. It was a textbook example of getting the tone right and adding real authority to the story.
We have 2 special reports, but first to John Hill, who's live at Bradford Crown Court for us. John?
Yes, well, the shockwaves from this case will be far-reaching. Amanda Hutton was a barely functioning alcoholic. She was known to be vulnerable. She was the victim of domestic violence at the hands of her estranged partner. She was known by the authorities. She was on their watch list, if you like. They were worried about her. But she was also difficult, a woman who would reject help. She actually slammed the door in the face of a health visitor. And all the time it seemed that her son, Hamza Khan, was invisible. His plight was invisible to the powers that be. He was never seen by doctors, he wasn't seen by teachers, by health visitors, by the police. Serious questions for the agencies tonight. And as she drank herself into oblivion, a litre of vodka a day at times, she pretended nothing was wrong. Her son was wasting away. Well, tonight, Calendar and ITV News have been given exclusive access to the house where these terrible events unfolded. Just a word of warning, some viewers may find the report that follows upsetting. Behind this closed door, a child lived and died. It could be any ordinary house, a 3-storey terraced family home in Bradford. But away from prying eyes, tiny Hamza Khan starved to death. This was Amanda Hutton's living room. It's where she spent much of her days. Empty now, waiting for new tenants to move in. It's an unremarkable room. But this was the room when she lived here. Abject squalor, mounds of rubbish, plastic bags, empty bottles, discarded food packaging, all surround a baby's high chair. The kitchen today gives little clue to what happened here. This was Amanda Hutton's kitchen, the floor invisible beneath piles of waste. A black bin liner overflows with rubbish. In the hallway, yet more, and over the letterbox, a plastic bag stops people from peering in, from smelling the filth. Upstairs in Amanda Hutton's bedroom is where a police officer found Hamza's body. His remains, in a cot next to his mother's bed, had lain there for almost 2 years. The prosecution said his body had been effectively mummified by the passage of time. Perhaps the most pathetic picture, this one taken by a police photographer, the label of the baby grow that Hamza was found in. It was for a baby aged 6 to 9 months. Hamza was 4.5 years old when he died, yet so small, so malnourished was he, that the clothing fitted him.
Good evening, where's Amanda here then?
The ghastly secrets of Amanda Hutton's home are finally revealed in September 2011. Unsteady on her feet, she's taken into custody.
Okay, so you do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you do not mention when questioned something which you later rely on in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence. Do you understand?
What's that then, Julie?
Pardon?
Further information from the
Further
scene?
information's been received from the scene that a child's body's been found in a cot in the bedroom where this female's been living.
A complaint by a neighbour about soiled nappies being thrown into his garden had prompted a rookie police community support officer to keep trying to gain access to the house.
I did look through the letterbox and I noticed that there was a plastic bag that had been pinned behind, and then this horrible smell, which was quite vile, just a mucky smell really, but nothing that I couldn't stand there. It actually made me step back, and my colleague Kath also, I was like, smell this, and she was like, yeah, that's quite, it wasn't nice. And when I saw all the flies and the smell, I was thinking, is there someone died in there?
Hutton told police Hamza was a fussy eater and claimed he'd fallen ill the day before he died, but she said she thought he was poorly and not seriously unwell. She repeatedly rejected claims from the prosecution that her son died due to neglect because she cared more about alcohol than her son. But experts found Hamza was so underfed that at the time of his death he was suffering from osteoporosis, thinning of the bones.
Amanda Hutton had many opportunities to accept the support that was offered to her, and many opportunities to engage with the professionals that are there to support her and her family, and she chose not to. She was obstructive, she was difficult, and she failed in her ability to parent that child, to look after his basic needs, and sadly died in the most difficult of circumstances, and I can only imagine the pain and suffering that child endured.
Hamza Khan, a little boy who in 21st century Britain never saw a doctor, never went to nursery, never went to school, and perhaps the final indignity, 4 years after his death, a little boy for whom there still hasn't been a funeral.
We're back to John at the court now, and after the verdict, John, more information was revealed about Amanda Hutton and her other children.
Yes, we've been able to report today, Duncan, for the first time that Amanda Hutton was in fact the mother of 8 children. Perhaps some measure of what was going on in that house. We've heard earlier in the trial that when Hamza died, instead of calling the police or an ambulance, within hours she actually phoned for a takeaway pizza, and then in the continuing years she actually carried on claiming child benefit in his name. But also for the first time today we can tell you that she's admitted 5 charges of neglect, of child cruelty, and they involved the 5 school-aged children who were living at her home. They were aged 5 to 13, and she'll be sentenced for those offences tomorrow as well here in the dock behind me at Bradford Crown Court. And joining her in the dock will be Tariq Khan, that's her eldest son, and he's admitted his part by really preventing the proper burial of his brother Hamza. So that will take place tomorrow. But now there are searching questions of all the agencies involved here. They talk about learning lessons. Could anything have been done to prevent Hamza's death?
Excellent work there by John Hill. Christine Alsford, who works for Meridian, is another reporter who does a lot of not same-day filming.
Arriving home from school after a 71-mile taxi journey.
I think the benefits of working on not same-day content are that often they're the stories that travel, so they can be used right across your different ops, your different newsrooms. They're stories where you can really get your teeth into something and deliver something you're really proud of.
And here are other examples where we've given our teams time to go out and film the stories.
And one of the main reasons why people come here is right below us. Historic buildings, country walks, canals, rivers.
A mile or so north and the route demolishes a number of farms, including this one, built in 1830. The line will cut in half the 200 acres used to grow crops and graze sheep. Beyond here, the 80-acre Staffordshire County Showground. The high-speed train will travel straight through this section in a deep cutting.
Ambulance, what's the address of the emergency? Hi, my sister, she got her in the shop.
On the 29th of March 2 years ago, an 11-year-old boy dialed 999.
I need you to tell me where you are. Hurry up, please.
His 5-year-old sister had been shot in the chest.
Please got a big hole in the chest. Okay, is she awake, yes or no? No, okay.
The events of that evening changed Tusha Kamalaswaran's life.
In the hours after an attack, just saying the word rape can seem an impossible task. It's why it's mostly a crime that stays behind closed doors, hidden by fear and silence. Catherine was raped in her home in Jarrow by a man she knew, who broke in during the night.
I sat downstairs, didn't know what to do, I was scared. It's not the fact that I didn't think anyone would believe us. I think the word rape, it's a dirty word.
Unlike most, Catherine decided to tell police. She was taken to a specialist rape centre and, like many of us, had no idea it existed. For the first time, our cameras have been allowed inside to show her journey in search of justice and recovery.
So how does it feel being back here?
Nerve-wracking. It brings everything back there. Makes it feel so real.
In some centres, victims must wait hours or even days without showering before a doctor becomes available to examine them.
These pictures, in all their intricate detail, have been done with nothing more than a pencil. They're by 29-year-old Arnold Sebutinde, who discovered his talent for portraiture when he was in Winson Green Prison in Birmingham. He used to draw his fellow inmates, charging them £2.50 or an ounce of tobacco. Now he's out, he's turned his art into a business, and instead of drawing prisoners, he's drawing royalty. And films of him at work online, you can draw with both hands at the same time, have had more than 50,000 hits. The most popular, the one of him sketching his beloved dog, Ted.
The daily walk's about to end with the worst of discoveries. A pet pulling towards a spot in the woods, the owner with no idea what it senses inside a bin bag.
The thought never goes away that a child either was killed here or was left here. It's still goosebumps now, just thinking about it.
Walker Colin Jackson can't move on like so many in Warrington until he knows who Callum really was.
I'm sure there's a family somewhere who every day, or at least the anniversary of the child's birth and death, will think about it, even just for a moment. And hopefully that would bring closure to them.
And to your community?
And to this community, yes, that the people here would think, yes, that's it, this is a peaceful place again.
New life now sprouts where another new life ended. Callum would have been in school today, choosing his future path. Who knows what he could have become? And that thought sits heavy on the minds of those who live near here, because despite this woodland's apparent isolation, there is a hidden close of houses just a few hundred yards that way, and it's full of people who wish he'd been left alive on their doorstep.
Have you driven up the street yet?
No. I was there the other day, of course. No. You think I maybe...
You've not put it in the sat-nav yet?
Yeah, no. After it was over, you'd have thought maybe I'd have driven up 4 or 5 times, but no, I haven't been up yet.
145, take one after full start.
It's 8 p.m. at the Emmerdale set and filming's just starting on this year's most dramatic storyline.
It is really dramatic. It's very, very pacey.
It's brilliant. I think it's going to be amazing. It's so exciting, thrilling.
They won't tell us what's going on. They're just throwing everyone out of their homes.
This
is Cameron, isn't it? It's just routine. We are clearing the village.
Well, you're clearing the village?
Usually we don't want any rain. We want it to be a clear night, but now they've got all these big mad rain machines. And I'll be honest, they're really strong. Do you know when you're doing the scenes, you can't keep your eyes open, they're really strong.
Cameron's in the pub!
For someone in this quiet suburb, it's almost game over.
Yes, of course, this is all a game. But not just any game. This is Cluedo, one of the top 10 board games of all time. And it was invented right here in this very room.
During the Second World War, number 9 Stanley Road in Birmingham's King's Heath was home to factory worker Anthony Pratt and his wife Elva. With little to do during the blackouts, Anthony scribbled down ideas for a board game based on a murder at a country mansion called Tudor Close. Originally, the victim varied, but later it was always the unseen Dr. Black. But as to who done it, was it Miss Scarlet in the library with a spanner? Colonel Mustard in the conservatory with the rope? Mrs. White in the kitchen with the dagger? The Reverend Green in the ballroom with the revolver? Mrs. Peacock in the dining room with the candlestick? Or Professor Plum in the hall with the lead piping? Someone who should know is Mr. Foster in the lounge with the book, the one he's just written about Anthony Pratt's creation.
He sort of like invited friends around to try the game out, and obviously he kept tinkering and tweaking with the rules and came up with names for the characters. He had a friend called Geoffrey Bull who was a neighbour, and he saw the game and he said, well, let's take this to Waddington's. So he took the game to Waddington's. They saw the game and immediately saw it was, well, there's a winner here. This has got a winning format.
Its creator may have died without the recognition he deserved, but now if anybody asks you who invented Cluedo, you can tell them it was Mr. Pratt in the dining room with the brilliant imagination.
Andy Bevan there, taking crime reporting to a new level. Now, we know our programmes are more locally focused in our sub-regions, those programmes that are being opted. We're starting to see the ratings improve. Let's hear from Head of News for ITV West Country, Terry Brennan.
Good evening. Parents in Cornwall are furious at the council's proposals to close 2 children's respite homes.
Well, since launching our new services here in West Country, our viewers are getting a much more localised service than previously. The demographics of both of our opt areas are very different, and as a result, the news agenda is very different. And by splitting the broadcast for the full 30 minutes, we're able to truly reflect what's happening in our patch day to day. So for example, a viewer who's watching in Penzance in West Cornwall, throughout our programme, chances are they're still hearing mentions of places near to where they live in Cornwall or in neighbouring Devon right the way throughout the broadcast. Our weather, we've also made that sub-regional, so that makes it feel much more local when you're watching the programme. We also aim to go out and film at a local beauty spot some weather pictures on any given day, and that may only be 20 seconds in the programme, but again, it just adds to that feel that even if you're watching the show at 6:25, you still feel like you're watching a service that is local to you. In short, a viewer watching in Bristol is getting a very different experience of ITV News West Country to a viewer watching in Plymouth.
And what's also really encouraging is seeing the on-screen journalists in those new opted regions working really hard to tailor one story to both sides of the region. Anglia is a really good example.
For my food bank story, we were able to do quite different versions by doing filming in the east and the west of the patch. So for the east package, we went to Norwich and did some filming at a food bank there. And then for the west package, I went over to Bedfordshire and did some self-shot footage there at another completely separate food bank. We were able to use the same case study for both pieces, as that was on the Bedfordshire-Cambridgeshire border, so right in the middle of the Anglia patch. And this is quite a good technique that we've been using a lot at Anglia to make sure that we can do tailored versions for east and west, but also not have to put in too much extra filming.
The new political unit at Millbank has returned from its most successful party conference season ever, and it's been great to see the political correspondents putting the politicians and the party leaders under real scrutiny.
But you think that's acceptable to say the room is full of sluts?
Godfrey Bloom's used to being on the defence, but today he was also on the attack. Not happy to be asked about a joke where he called women sluts.
Was there a single woman in there that didn't laugh at the joke, you sad little man? You, sir, are a racist. Why am I a racist for saying there aren't any black people? And you've checked out the colour of people's faces? Disgraceful! You're disgraceful!
Do you not think that was perhaps crossing the line there?
Were you there?
I've seen the footage and you hit him quite hard, Mr. Bloom.
With a magazine?
Yes,
you think that was hard?
Well, I think it was a little bit unfair, perhaps. He was asking you a question as a journalist, and I think perhaps you overstepped the mark. Do you think that's fair?
No, I don't think it's fair at all. No, I won't have people be rude to me. Some journalists think because I'm a politician, they can treat and speak to me just how they choose. Let me tell you one thing, and let me make this very clear. I'm not a professional politician. I'm an ordinary man, an ex-soldier, and from the rugby club. You treat me badly, you'll get a lot worse than that. Let me make that very clear. I will not put up with that sort of impertinence.
Is that a threat to journalists then?
That is a threat to any journalist who behaves to me in that manner again. Yes, it is.
And I also showed him this letter from Devon pensioner Mrs. Liz Durose, who says she feels a virtual prisoner in the village of Brendan because buses no longer run and the local shops have closed.
Could I give you that letter to look at, to pass on to the relevant minister and see what can be done for people like that?
I will certainly look at this. I represent a rural constituency and I know how lonely some people can get.
When the Prime Minister chooses to pay you a visit, it's more than just a courtesy call.
Wales is on the verge of dramatic changes to devolution.
The Prime Minister is live in the studio.
Well, Carl, Prime Ministers don't come and sit on the sofa with you, do they, without big announcements to make?
David Cameron's arrival at ITV Wales HQ on Thursday signalled changes to come in Wales's devolution. Changes, he said, that would make our country's government more accountable.
I think that we get better government if we give people in Wales more control over their future, more control over their destiny.
Do you like playing inside or outside?
He'd limbered up for the conference by playing outside. A football match at Lansing between Labour and the press. Labour lost 4-0. He was determined not to fall flat on his face today as he made his big speech and gave the strongest signal yet that under Labour, HS2, the high-speed rail link through Oxfordshire and Buckinghamshire, isn't necessarily a done deal. Costs, he said, must be kept under control.
There will be no blank cheque from me as a Labour Chancellor for this project.
His message, Labour can be trusted on the economy. One bit of the economy that's doing very nicely, thank you, this week is the local economy here. Hotels, taxis, restaurants doing a roaring trade.
All the seafront bars and cafes are packed out with Labour delegates discussing the latest conference events. All except this one. I can't think why. Phil Hornby, ITV News, Brighton.
Having new opted programmes means it's become a busier world, but that still hasn't stopped our presenters getting out on the road to do live reporting and features. Here are some examples.
Being here gives you a real sense of just how precariously positioned this plane was when it came down last night in St Mary, and it'll be here for some time to come. The Air Accident Investigation Branch still have to carry out a full technical survey before they can remove it.
6 cameras over here.
First, I was photographed by 6 cameras.
The computer can locate you in all the 6 cameras, and it has a photo of you from 6 different angles.
Which all adds up to seeing me in 3D.
Could you please sit up straight?
The system can cope with all kinds of expressions, but I'm going deadpan.
That's excellent.
4 of the cameras are shooting in infrared, which removes shadows.
What you can see the computer doing over here is it is trying to locate all the points on your face in all the images.
See, this is the sort of behind-the-scenes area of Emmerdale that you don't usually get to see behind the village. And Mike and I are very excited because we've both got our own Winnebagos. The canteen's over there where all the cast are going to be meeting later to have something to eat in the middle of the night. You can see I'm next door to Charlie Webb, who's one of the big stars. She plays Debbie Dingle. But if you come over here, look at this. Christine Talbot, news reporter. Hey, this is our moment. We've got to run down at the end of the action, and Mike and I are going to be in the thick of it. Okay.
Stop! Get back! Get back!
In the first of our 5-part series looking at 100 years of Bollywood, we see just how important that link was. This is how we know Bollywood films today. But the industry had a very humble beginning with the first silent film, Raja Harishchandra, in 1913. So was that a way of keeping that connection?
And we have to spend a whole day, 3 films, in, and 1 ticket. We used to do that.
So you got your money's worth.
Yes.
Are you in my top 3? Oh my God! Oh, you're in my top 3.
You're sharing something quite special with us, never seen by a TV audience before. Tell us about this.
This is Luke when he was just about 11. He'd just gone to his new secondary school, and they decided to put on something called the Bex Factor. So a bit of a throwback, sort of late 50s, early 60s, and Luke performing.
Finally, I want to show a piece from Nicola Hendy from ITV Wales, who went sky high, armed with 2 GoPros.
Oh, that looked fast. I am genuinely petrified. I don't think I can do this.
Yeah, you ready then, Chef?
No, I'm not ready, no.
Yeah.
Oh my God. No!
3, 2, 1.
Despite the screams, it's a truly exhilarating experience. You actually feel like you're flying across the quarry.
The producer was really keen to show just how petrified I was going down the zip wire. So we used, as you can see, this plastic GoPro attachment that we stuck on using a special GoPro sticky pad and put loads and loads of masking tape around it in the hope that it would stay on when we were doing 80 miles an hour down the zip wire. I also had a GoPro on the back of my helmet looking back up the zip wire to show just how fast and how far I'd come. And at one point I do a thumbs up to the camera just before we get to the end, and I was told by the people who run the zip wire that taking my hands out from behind me could slow me down and create a bit of wind resistance, and I might not reach the end. But I thought it probably was worth the risk to give it a go. I was quite pleased with that shot, actually, the fact that I could concentrate on doing something else as well as screaming, and I still made it to the end, so I think that was successful.
Yes, I really do think that Nicola Hendy has found the next venue for the ITV Wales away day. That wraps up our first showcase. Thank you very much indeed for taking the time out to take a look at it. It's all about sharing good ideas and sharing good practice, and I really do hope you've enjoyed it.